Could it be? Could it happen? Can you imagine? Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Coming your way on a Thursday afternoon, 2:30 Eastern Time. And wherever you are, I hope the sun is shining, and more importantly, that you're having a good day in all that you hope to do and accomplish, and so forth. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here. Again, this is what we do is, as much as it is possible, we go live when there is breaking news. So this is substantial news. This could be substantial news as it pertains to football, and we're here to talk football. It is substantial news, and it is truly news in a day and age, both in this sport and politically and otherwise, where it is difficult for many people to distinguish between news and speculation. This is news because this is actual activity. This is a decision that's been made. Now, if it impacts, or when it impacts, or will it impact college football in the Big Ten and these two particular schools and football programs in particular, we do not know. We welcome you into the Voice of College Football. Of course, hit the like button, even if you don't agree with me, and many of you don't, but that makes for good discussion, debate, and analysis, and that's what we provide every day. Best discussion, debate, and analysis right here at the Voice of College Football. So please hit the like button and tell people that we're here talking college football with all of you. Share the videos out on social media. Just flat out tell people the old-fashioned way, whether that be in person. Can you imagine speaking to somebody in person? Yeah, you could actually speak to them face to face, where you can actually touch them. And with AI being what it is now, I don't even know how that could be duplicated, but I think we are there. But actually talking to people, letting people know that we are here talking college football with all of you. My name's Mark. Good to be here at the Voice of College Football. All right, we are not going to go through the intricacies of AAU status and membership. All that matters here is that Notre Dame and Miami have received membership to AAU. So we will briefly read the response by the universities, but the responses and the impact and the meaning of all that is extensive, but that is not to be explored here. We are a football first channel. We are a football only channel. What we will do here is talk football matchups, football fit, Miami to the Big Ten, Notre Dame to the Big Ten. We are not reporting in any way, nor am I speculating that this is going to happen. However, we know how important AAU membership is to the Big Ten. And we know that these two schools, their football programs, their athletic departments are just first rate in so many ways. We already know that the Big Ten wants Notre Dame. We can surmise that the Big Ten would be mighty interested in Miami if it's not already. And you know what? I'm just about going to guarantee that Miami's already on the Big Ten's radar. And this is something that we've discussed going all the way back 2 summers ago to Oklahoma, Texas. So we are going to hit all the football aspects of it. Get back together with us tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. We've got our friend Tony Altimore, consultant and strategist, going to join us tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, where we go through AAU membership, what it means, the academic standing of both Notre Dame University, the University of Notre Dame, my apologies, and the University of Miami, their academic standards, their academic standing, their various metrics, both involving academics and culture fits, and then also looking at, of course, the football metrics, both on the field and financially, and the athletic metrics, both on the field and monetarily. But first and foremost, we talk the football here, but I did want to read the opening statements from both Notre Dame and Miami. Please consider contributing to the channel here at the Voice of College Football. We want to do this for a long, long time for you. All right, here we go. The University of Notre Dame has been selected for inclusion in the Association of American Universities, a consortium of the nation's leading public and private research universities. So that's the status. It doesn't mean that there aren't a ton of schools outside of AAU that just did not maybe simply apply or didn't focus on certain application criteria that involve the research, but they're tremendous schools. So it doesn't mean that all the AAU schools are above all the other schools. It's a research-focused membership. So this comes from Notre Dame's president, Reverend John I. Jenkins. While Notre Dame has long been known for its undergraduate education, we have striven to be a preeminent research institution with superb graduate education, all informed by our Catholic mission. Okay. Again, we could read on and on and on and on, but it doesn't change anything. And as far as we're concerned in football, just to read the Miami announcement, it's probably very similar. The University of Miami has been chosen as one of the newest members of the esteemed Association of American Universities, a distinguished national organization of leading research universities founded in 1900. The invitation to join the prestigious organization, considered the gold standard in American higher education, comes as the university's research and sponsored program expenditures totaled more than $413 million in fiscal 2022. Sometimes we have this discussion about academics, academic money, endowments, budgets, donations, all the things that go into that, fundraising and so forth. And then the football. There's a number right there for you. $413 million in fiscal year 2022 alone. That's in one fiscal year, the most recent, demonstrating a critical focus to address the world's most complex issues. And it proceeds from there. Miami fans, Notre Dame fans, how do you like this? What do you think of it? Again, this is not membership to the Big Ten. This is not membership to the Big Ten. This is a stepping stone. This is something that could be completely unrelated. Could be completely unrelated. However, I would say in the case of Miami in particular, this does mean something based on its frayed relationship with the ACC, where it stands. We know what has been pursued just in the last few weeks concerning legal review of the grant of rights. We know how the ACC responded, but that doesn't change, especially Florida State, Miami, and Clemson, and other universities that were in that pack of 7 in the ACC. That doesn't change. That's a goodwill gesture of the ACC. And when I say goodwill in a business sense, a goodwill gesture to try to mend fences and try to reach out and show that they are listening, to show that they are going to try to do something, but it's not going to correct the issues by any stretch of the imagination. So we know what the relationship is between Miami and the ACC. We know what steps are being taken to review the grant of rights. We know that the Big Ten requires AAU membership. I know that based on my most current recollection of Nebraska's standing is that Nebraska gained membership to the AAU, joined the Big Ten, and has since lost its AAU membership. Don't hold me to that, but I believe that's what the story is. So certainly that's the situation with Nebraska. So obviously the Big Ten has made a condition there where one of its members lost membership to the AAU, and it still didn't automatically just say, bye, you're out of the AAU, you're out of the Big Ten. But it is a primary component in membership to the Big Ten. All right, let's focus on the football. Let's get to your comments and questions. And again, we have left the link there in the live chat if you'd like to call in to the Voice of College Football and discuss this. Otherwise, my intent here was to talk football, fit, Miami, Big Ten, Notre Dame, Big Ten. And then deep dive tonight. Again, this is going to be a great show, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Coming off of this breaking news, we got Tony Altimore joining us at 8 o'clock Eastern time, right here on the main channel, on the Notre Dame channel, on the Miami channel, to talk about what all of this entails and to really take a look at these universities, their athletic departments, and their football programs, and how they stack up and how they fit, how they would fit in the Big Ten. I have posted all sorts of videos going back 2 years in regards to various fits in the Big Ten, and I have covered Notre Dame and Miami. I have covered the various Pac-12 schools that have been rumored or are projected as likely Big Ten candidates or rumored Big Ten candidates. Also in the ACC, I've done the same thing. Posted a video a few weeks ago where we lined up Notre Dame against the Big Ten. And just because of those rivalries that have been severed to the most part in recent years, of course, with Notre Dame aligning with the ACC, that the Michigan State, the Michigan, and the Purdue rivalries have gone by the wayside. Michigan State, Purdue used to play Notre Dame every year. But that being said, there are, I believe the number is, and again, please check out the video, Notre Dame against the Big Ten. 40, no. The number was, I believe, something like 83 games played against the Big Ten. They were something like 44-37, whatever that number came to, 81 games against the Big Ten in this century. You can't take any other school in the country outside of a conference that has played a particular conference as much as Notre Dame has played the Big Ten. That's where the football roots ties are. I know there's a lot of bad blood there. I know that a lot of decisions have been made or failed to be made by, of course, the University of Michigan in years gone by. They are the target of Notre Dame ire in keeping them out of the Big Ten at one point. And Notre Dame does not appear to want to join a conference. However, if the landscape of college football continues to change in such a way that it becomes a requirement to compete for a national championship, to compete competitively on a national landscape, I don't think we're in a position to go to that distance right now. But as NIL, as NIL continues to be not necessarily an issue, but from a negative standpoint, but it's an issue to be dealt with, to be handled, to be regimented, and to be addressed, along with the transfer portal, along with the new expanded college football playoff, along with all the realignment that goes on. If the sport becomes more structured, meaning a governing body, a commissioner would emerge at some point, and I think we're, we appear to be quite a ways away from that, unfortunately, because that would take a lot of cooperation between the conferences, and especially the Big Ten and the SEC seem mighty content to be where they are, where they have full autonomy over their conference and do what they choose. And then the Big 12 seems to have settled in a nice little position where they are a clear, at best, number 3, but they're safe, they're secure, they're going to make money and play football and have an entry or two into the college football playoff. My point being is that it would take a ton of cooperation between these conferences to agree on what type of commissioner or governing body would have to manage the sport, organize the sport, have oversight over the sport of college football. However, if all these various issues that continue to confront the sport get more exhaustive and more unwieldy to try to get a hold of individually, there could be a thrust at some point, and I hope that there is, to gain some type of national surge, some national cooperation between all these conferences to do something about all these things and understand we can deal with all these matters with a better focus, with more attention, with more uniformity. And especially since NIL is the issue that has come to the forefront that has crossed state lines and is being dealt with differently in different states, where if there was a governing body or a commissioner that would be the best place to be, as long as it's being done right. That's an assumption that we're being made, that the commissioner is doing a good job and the governing body is addressing these things in a productive and healthy manner for everyone, student athlete, first and foremost. I said all that to lead us to the Notre Dame situation, because unless Notre Dame becomes money focused from a football standpoint overnight, they seem more than content. They're happy to be, for a number of reasons, to be independent. And for as much as I hate Notre Dame being an independent, and they're on an island all by themselves now. Now that BYU has joined the Big 12, I know technically there are other independent schools like UMass, like New Mexico State. Yes, they exist. Liberty's now joined a conference. Yes, they exist. Connecticut, they exist. However, Notre Dame's the only one of national relevance. Of course, it's not even close. Even when BYU was an independent, nobody really, no offense, BYU, but nobody really cared, because BYU is not going to be competing on a national scale. Now they have the opportunity to as a Big 12 member, but as an independent, when is the last time BYU was playing for anything that meant anything on a national scale? 1984. Okay. Different system and so forth. So again, I say all that to get us to the point where, unless the money becomes so overwhelming in the Big Ten, the SEC, those would be the two, or if something drastic would happen with the ACC, but I just don't see that ever happening, to get them on equal footing. And they shouldn't be on equal footing with the Big Ten and the SEC. Their numbers don't command it. So there's a lot of talk about the ACC fighting for its rights and for those schools to gain that type of level of compensation for their games. But let's also understand that the ACC does not bring in the numbers to have equal footing, or have achieved or earned equal footing financially with the Big Ten and the SEC. So that's part of it as well. So the ACC is in a bad contract, but part of that is also that they're being compensated based on their return. The Big Ten and the SEC get the best football ratings by far. Check out the series we posted a couple months ago. Had a fun time doing a deep dive on 2022 TV ratings. And those ratings are pretty consistent from year to year. The Big Ten and the SEC. So it would take a governing body or a commissioner, unless the money becomes so overwhelming that Notre Dame at some point says our $35 million is not enough to compete. We need the $90 million. I'm just throwing out numbers. They're not exactly accurate, but something in that range where they say, okay, 2 to 3 times more. Okay, this has caused us to fall behind, because again, that's not in a vacuum of one particular year or season. Multiply that out. Just like if you can make $50,000 at a job or $100,000 at a job. No. Let's size this down to, let's make it proportionate. If you could make $50,000 at a job, or you could make $120,000 at a job, well, it's not just about, that's a significant difference. But that's not just about this year. If you're going to stay at that company for 10 years, that's $500,000. That's $1.2 million. And then if you're smart with your money, that's a even greater disparity and gap, because the $50,000 may just put you in a place where you can just pay the bills. That's all you can do. The $120,000 may put you in a place where, okay, we can do all these other things. Plus, man, I can turn that extra 70 grand into, and so that 50 versus 120 or 500 over a 10-year span versus 1.2 million becomes 500,000 versus 5 million. So anyway, point being, Notre Dame's going to stay independent, in my estimation, based on all indications, unless the money becomes so egregiously difficult for them to stomach and compete against, or there's a governing body or a commissioner that will not force Notre Dame to join a conference, but will make it impossible for Notre Dame to compete in major college football without joining a conference. You can do that two ways: shut them out of the playoff, or build a schedule and a scheduling format for all of your conferences that shuts out Notre Dame. So if Notre Dame's got nobody to play and they can't play for a national championship, then why play football? Of course, you can't play football. They'll be playing against FCS teams, as they are for one of the few times this year against Tennessee State. Okay, we also talked about addressing Notre Dame and Miami against the Big Ten. Check out the video that I posted where I basically sized up Notre Dame and the 80-some times that they played the Big Ten since the year 2000, and then how Notre Dame would project in the Big Ten. And basically, I think it's easy to see that Notre Dame has not been on par with Ohio State, the leader in the clubhouse, the elite of the Big Ten. I'm not talking about right this second. Obviously, Michigan owns the Big Ten right this second. They are the champion 2 times. They are a winner in the game back-to-back years by 2 and 3 scores. Michigan is on the field the standard. However, let's broaden out the perspective on this. Obviously, Ohio State is just completely, more so than any other team outside of possibly Oklahoma. Clemson, of course, recently since 2015. But it's been Ohio State and Oklahoma in terms of just owning the conference. And then Ohio State, of course, has been much more competitive on a national scale than Oklahoma. So they've been up here. Notre Dame is their Penn State. That's who they are on the field until proven otherwise. And Penn State appears to be a better team coming into this season. I think that's certainly debatable. I don't think that's some kind of conclusion that is guaranteed that Penn State is just because people are comfortable with anointing Drew Aller and that Sean Clifford was a marginal quarterback and he's gone. And then it kind of seems like it's Penn State's time. They lost a lot on defense, and Notre Dame certainly will have something to say about its schedule and competing against 3 elite or near elite teams, Clemson, USC, and Ohio State this year. So I put Notre Dame and Penn State generally on the same level. There are in somewhere in that 5 to 12 range. Not this particular season necessarily, although I think it does apply, but overall, right now, recent college football history. And that's where I believe Notre Dame would compete in the Big Ten. I think they would be better than Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska, certainly, Purdue and others, Michigan State, who's hot and cold, as we've seen over the last 15 years, depending on their coaching situation. There's one complete given in the Big Ten, and there are 2 that are, 3 with USC arriving on the cusp. And I think USC has the biggest upside of any school, even beyond Ohio State, that USC has shown us throughout history that it can be not just a national power, they can be an all-time power. They can field all-time teams on a regular basis, or a more regular basis than just about anyone in college football. But they're a ways away from that, certainly. They first need to win a Pac-12 championship or a conference championship as they move to the Big Ten. So Notre Dame would be in that top 4 to 5 in the Big Ten. It would appear with an opportunity to do even better. How that would impact their recruiting, that's a good question. It's not something I have thought about until it just entered my mind. So you guys may have thoughts on Notre Dame's recruiting status and how it would be impacted by joining the Big Ten. We will move on to the Miami aspect in all this, but hey, let's see the comments. We have left the link in the chat, so give it a look and jump on board here. Jason, appreciate you being here. Always love to see Jason. Well, I get to see Jason's name and Jim Harbaugh's face. I don't know if that's a great combination, but Jason, we appreciate you. Mark, if Notre Dame and Miami joined, who do you think is next? Clemson and Florida State, Stanford and Cal, Oregon and Washington. And the way Jason paired those 3 sets, is spot on. I believe that's how they will arrive, if they arrive, Clemson and Florida State, possibly to the SEC. All right, so Oregon and Washington, unless, well, Clint is saying all of them. So that sounds a bit ridiculous, but it's not. Long term. Oh, my goodness. You know what? I typed in to please join the show a long time ago, and I did not hit enter. There it is. There you can call the show. The link is in the chat. Wow, that's a lot to digest right there, Jason. Let's go to it. Clemson and Florida State. So if I'm the Big Ten, and again, I do not have inside intel. I do not work at the league office. I'm strictly talking as a former TV guy that loves college football, that has covered it for years and years and years and years. In addition to Notre Dame, Notre Dame's the number one prize. That's all there is to it. For the Big Ten, Notre Dame is the prize. After Notre Dame, if I'm the Big Ten, Florida State, Miami. I have said this forever. I have said this for 2 years. I go to get Florida State and Miami because the Big Ten checks every box. Academics, elite, football attendance, rivals the SEC, football viewership on TV, money, facilities. The Big Ten checks every box, except they don't have enough football players. They need more football players, and those football players are in Florida. So I would go down there. Stanford, Cal. Of course, the Cal edition is just basically academic, but I think it's strong enough to be joined with Stanford. And for those of you who would disparage Stanford on the football field, let's keep in mind it's only been 5 years since they've been good, only 10 years since they've been elite, near elite. Nobody goes to the games, but when Michigan's heading out to Stanford and Ohio State and Wisconsin, I think that changes a lot there. We saw that 10 years ago when Ohio State showed up at Cal. They played a home and home with Cal, and nobody showed up at these Cal football games. Ohio State came to town, and more Cal people showed up, but then like 70% of the stadium was scarlet and gray as well. So Oregon, Washington, I would put it exactly in that order: Clemson, Florida State, Stanford, Cal, Oregon, Washington, and I'll put the percentages on it as like in the next 10 years. See, I don't know if Clemson's the fit for the Big Ten. I think it's Florida State, Miami. Clemson, from an academic standpoint, I do not think makes the grade. So I'll go Florida State, Miami at, I think there are certainly components within Florida State that want to join the SEC and not the Big Ten. I think that they would have an internal fight. I'm just speculating, but I'm adding up everything I know about where Florida State stands on football, culture, academics, all those things. They would have an internal fight. I think Miami would lean more heavily Big Ten. Stanford and Cal are obviously just sold in. That would just be a Big Ten move. Oregon, Washington, just a Big Ten move unless they get turned down. Then they go to the Big 12 possibly, and we're assuming the Pac-12 implodes. Yeah, I'm going Miami, Florida State at like a 60% certainty, and Stanford, Cal at more like a 40%, and Oregon, Washington more in the 20 or 25% range. Our buddy Will's on the line. Will, what's going on today?
I fear this is the beginning of the end to Notre Dame's independent status.
So you think this is meaningful? This means something in terms of football. Okay. Mm-hmm. I do too, but I don't want to sell it like I know that this is, this could be there is a possibility that this could be just completely separate, that we want to achieve this status. We're more focused on research and we want to bring ourselves to this status, and we're not even thinking in this direction. I believe you. I believe most likely they're connected. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Especially since Notre Dame's NBC deal ends after either before or after the 2024 season. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody let us know that in the chat if you know when Notre Dame's TV contract runs out. I would like to know if it is exactly before 24 or after 24.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I don't know. Like, it's just, it takes away what some of what like Notre Dame is. I don't know. It stings.
It
It
does.
stings. Mm-hmm.
I have never disparaged Notre Dame for their.
Mm-hmm.
I have always, when I have seemingly, if you just go from the optics of, what my rants have sounded like, that it seems to be directed at Notre Dame. It's not directed at Notre Dame at all. It's directed toward all the entities of college football and specifically the ACC. But if I'm Notre Dame, yes, this is one of the last things that make Notre Dame different than everyone else. They play a national schedule. They do what they want. And also just think about the ability to run your football program the way you want, to do what you want instead of having to go to a vote and having Indiana and Illinois push you around because they voted a certain way and they outed you 2-1. Not that they're intentional. I'm not saying they're going to intentionally do that, but if you lose a vote, 9-7, and Indiana, Rutgers, and Illinois voted the other way, and you're thinking, really, we have to be subservient to them? Yeah, there's a lot that Notre Dame has going for it. Do we know how much money they're making from NBC?
I can look it up. I'm going to do a quick Google search. I don't know the number.
I've looked that up in the past, or I've had people tell me, and I forget. Because it seems to be significant, but not to them. Like
$22 million per year.
22?
It says currently, according to the Fighting Irish Wire.
Oh, wow, they're losing a lot of money.
Yeah. So, yeah, but I don't know. It would be fun to bring back of course, we would keep the rivalries with USC. We would play Michigan State, Penn State, Ohio State. So that would be fun. But
I would love it.
Yeah.
I wanted this like before you were alive. I used to talk about this. I used to when I was 12 years old, watch Notre Dame play all those teams and go, why isn't Notre Dame in the Big Ten? Notre Dame should be in the Big Ten.
Our pal Tony wants to pop in for a second.
Oh, yeah. There he is. Tony,
hey guys,
working overtime today.
Congratulations! Hey, I'm getting some
Eastern time. Yes, sir.
Getting some stuff ready for tonight. Hey, Will. Here's a thought on today. And this is gonna sound cheesy, and I don't want it to sound cheesy, but it kind of is. This is probably like Notre Dame. If you go back old school Notre Dame, right? Like World War II kind of Notre Dame days, like. Notre Dame was the not accepted blue collar Catholic up and coming bootstraps institution, and they built themselves into an academic juggernaut. And today is the day that the Ivy League voted to welcome Notre Dame into the club. Notre Dame is Notre Dame and Wake Forest are the only two schools in the U.S. News Top 35 not already in the AAU. And so, we're talking today, of course, about the excitement and the football implications. I think there's huge sports implications, but the big thing is that today, the Ivy League and the ritziest of the Big Ten and the University of California and the University of Chicago and everybody like that said, Notre Dame, you are one of us. Welcome to the club. And to Irish fans everywhere, and especially Irish alumni, Notre Dame faculty, families, whatever, congrats, guys. This is big. So Notre Dame, no matter what you do, and I don't think you're going to do anything today or tomorrow, but no matter what you do, all of those people that crapped on you guys 100 years ago have literally said you are among the elite universities of this world. Welcome to the AAU.
Tony, thank you for reminding me there in the chat that the $22 million is from NBC for the 6 or 7 home games, whatever the case might be, not the entire schedule of money that they're
just for the home game. So
yeah,
and of course, because of your ACC deal, though, you don't get any. Well, you get some money from the ACC on the football, but not as much, and it's more complicated. Oh, wait, hold on, we got a whole posse here. Should we just quick add the posse? Will, do you mind?
Sure, we can add the posse Before we had the posse and before they comment here, I do have one question for you, Tony.
Yeah.
That AAU vote, how much of that do you believe is just a flat out like they reached this metric, they reached this, they hit this requirement?
It is entirely based on that. However, there's a lot of schools that are based on that.
Mhm.
It's just very curious, and we'll talk more about it later tonight. I'm going to make some charts and compare some data. It's very curious that Notre Dame and Miami and Arizona State, like basically the Pac got 2 and the Big Ten got 2. Let's be honest. The Pac got Arizona State and UC Riverside, who's part of the University of California. The Big Ten got Notre Dame and Miami. And then the other two are George Washington, the great school in D.C., and USF. And now, again, all those schools are deserving. Who's not on the list is also very, very interesting because Virginia Tech is not on the list. Florida State is not on the list. Georgia was the one. If I had to put money on somebody, I had to put my money on Georgia.
And so, Tony, we did see a preliminary list just a few weeks ago that included those schools, and I think the list was about 14 or 15 schools.
So I put out a list of, and this is several years old, but it was from the New America Foundation, of who they thought were the 15 most deserving. All these schools were on there except GW because sort of their metrics, they don't like GW, but it's fine. But very interesting. No Virginia Tech, no Georgia, no Florida State. So remember that half the AAU, and again, this is not about sport. This is about all these schools have achieved what they need to. They are elite. Notre Dame's doing $250 million a year in research, right? But why Notre Dame and not Wake Forest? Why ASU and not Georgia? I'll also tell you, and this is sort of tinfoil hat. We talked about this on our Pac-12 show in February, and everyone made fun of me for saying this in February. Everyone did. I said if I was Arizona State, the price of Pac-12 permanence would be an AAU invitation. And about 2 weeks ago, Arizona completely reversed course and shut up about everything Big 12. And except for the most 12-9 of the nutties, nobody talks about Arizona to the Big 12 anymore. Is that a coincidence that Arizona State got literally the dream of Michael Crow's professional career during the middle of these very contentious Pac-12 negotiations? Again, Arizona State, #1 most deserving AAU school. Just kind of funny timing that it happens now, and all of the Arizona and Arizona State to the Big 12 stuff just stops. Remember that.
We're not laughing at you, Tony.
Plenty of others were.
Absolutely not us here at the Voice of College Football. You're our guy.
You can laugh at me for other things. But I was right on that one.
When would there be another vote for AAU membership?
So they haven't done anybody since 2019.
Okay.
So I guess they can technically do it at any point. I'm going to look at the numbers. The fact that they added 6 is astronomical. They usually add 2 and then wait 5 years and add another 2. So, the fact that they threw in 6 at once is that's a lot. And again, all of these schools are deserving, and there's a lot of other schools that are deserving too. Virginia Tech, Georgia, tons of them. But
now, Tony, the metrics that I seen in the people I talked to, me and you discussed this.
Yep.
Georgia was supposed to be a top 4 for the AAU.
I would have thought so.
They were in the top 4 of everybody's choice. Miami was not even in the top 10.
Yes, I agree. That would have been my thought.
Something happened because Miami, if you look at the metrics, and I don't care, which metrics you use.
And neither was GW, by the way.
Yeah. But Georgia was top 4, top 5.
Yeah.
In all the metrics. And Miami was not even top 10. And now all of a sudden, Georgia's on the outside looking in, and Miami moved up. And why would they move up? Because the metrics didn't change. Somebody had to pull some strings for that to happen.
Now, in fairness, Miami's a snotty private school, and if there's one thing the AAU loves, it's its snotty private schools. I say snotty in a good way.
Maybe Stetson Bennett not graduating in 7 years might have had something to do with Georgia getting knocked down a peg.
Yeah, you got to graduate.
I don't know.
You got to graduate your quarterback in 7 years.
That, and I think John Ruiz probably got into the AAU game instead of just buying players now. Oh, did I say that? Gosh dang it.
I went the opposite way, Tim. I went the opposite way. I didn't bash Miami. I thought Georgia was due.
I mean, here's the thing, guys. Who would have thought that reenacting the Lou Holtz versus Jimmy Johnson brawl would be the new icebreaker for the AAU?
Hey, I'm going to go on record right now. I'm going to tell you who's going to break that ACC grant of rights.
Miami.
Nope.
Who?
Notre Dame.
Well, but Notre Dame has a different buyout.
Hold on. If and when Notre Dame goes to the Big Ten, and that's going to bring on who knows how many. I believe you'll have 20 teams in the Big Ten. ESPN, has the deal with the SEC, and it's debatable who has more power, the SEC or ESPN, because ESPN's taking a hit business-wise. And Sankey's holding that poker card, right? 8 or 9 games. Okay, ESPN, you want us to go to 9? Give us a reason why, right? Because it's must-watch TV. Broadcast TV, linear TV is taking a hit. Mark, you could probably throw out the numbers, but people that watch your show and watch college football are trending, I would think, 45 and over.
The numbers for this particular platform, us here at the Voice of College Football.
Let's just say college football in general that watch on linear TV.
We have remarkably a consistent viewership from 25 to 34, all those 10-year ranges, 35, the next 10 years, 45, 54, 54, 65. They're all like 20% of our viewership each, 22%, something like that. Now, in terms of college football skews old because of the alumni factor.
So obviously it's going to go to
well, and for YouTube, we skew old.
So here's the thing. If ESPN wants to get the SEC to go from 8 to 9 games, there's ways that ESPN can do backroom deals to break that grant of rights. And okay, we're going to take X amount of teams to get us to 20 so we can compete with the Big Ten and CBS, NBC, Fox, whoever is that combination. I'm seeing that going down by 2030. In the next 5 to 6 years when these contracts roll, that's a way that I think discussions with the SEC and ESPN, how they can get those prized teams into their conference. And you're going to have 40 teams. You're going to have 20 and 20. And that's going to be college football because Mark, you shared the numbers. You're going to have,
Rick, there's a precedence for that because though, because people act like the Big 12 got their whole new deal, like just because they're so cool. But like one of the main drivers of that was getting Oklahoma and Texas out of the conference. That was a huge issue for ESPN.
Right. And the thing with the SEC, everybody's talking about, well, they're going to stay at 8 games and blah, blah, blah. It's not that the SEC don't want to go to 9 games. It's we're not going to 9 games for the same amount of money. Our contract is not signed yet. Our contract will start in 2025. And we're just asking ESPN to pony up more money. We'll play another conference game. Next year, or the first year when Texas and OU come, we will play 8 games. That vote is going to happen. We're only going to stay at 8. But when our new contract starts in 2025, you will see the SEC at 9 games.
I don't think so.
You're going to see it because they just want more money is what the deal is. That's holding it up.
But if I'm the SEC, why do I want to play 9 games? I think you guys are smart to play 8 games, especially with the college football playoff going to 12 teams.
Oh yeah, I mean,
because you guys are the best conference. You're the best conference.
I think we will go to 9 though, and the reason ESPN is in favor of getting rid of some teams from the ACC, ESPN is looking at if they can get some of the ACC teams to move over to the Big Ten, then maybe ESPN can get back into the Big Ten.
Yeah. Mark, you previewed earlier this week all the new TV times that are coming out, and some of those games, they're laughable. I'm rolling my eyes, right?
They are.
Yeah, I'm tuning in on CBS for Rutgers and is it Northwestern?
Got the Rutgers Northwestern game.
And then you follow that with Oregon State and San Jose State. All right. Well, they've got the TV networks have all the data, and you're going to have reduced TV windows. And so they're going to want home runs as rights fees continue to go up, as viewers are cutting the cord and there's less and less cable. The demand for great games every window is going to increase. And I'm sorry, but the smaller schools, and we've talked about them in 5, 6, 7 years, they're not going to be on TV, but they get a chance to qualify for this 12-team playoff or 16 or whatever it goes. But the ones that you're going to see on TV are going to be in the Power 2. It's going to be the Big Ten and the SEC. And ESPN's got to figure out, okay, when are we going to break this grant of rights? They've got the SEC there. That's the next domino. After Notre Dame makes its move, if they join the Big Ten, consider the grant of rights discussions by ESPN to be broken, because you're gonna move along and the value is going to be less, and they're going to make more money because guess what? You're going to add Florida State potentially in there, maybe a Miami, Clemson, and these games are going to be freaking outrageous. It's going to be like the NFL. And, with all these moving pieces, NIL, transfer portal, there's got to be some type of consensus, some type of unification, and that's coming too.
So I agree with much of that, Rick. What I'm not working out is the math on the inventory versus the time slots. Those don't change. If we've got the same number of networks involved and they want college football to be played at noon, 3:30, 7, etc., Eastern time, and then we've got the same amount of teams involved and the same amount of big draws versus little draws, there's still going to be room. There's still going to be room for Northwestern and Rutgers to play somewhere on a major network.
No, I get that, but it's going to be, I'm sorry, it's going to be the Big Ten and the SEC. Those 40 teams are going to be playing at the best time slots. And, you're going to have teams from the Big 12, whatever's left of the ACC, the Pac-12, they'll be playing whenever they're told to play, on whatever night they're told to play. But if you're the major networks, you're going to get the best games in the best hours, because that's where college football is going.
Before any of this happened, or I caught word of it, whatever that was, 3 or 4 hours ago, I was actually trying to construct, because I had a number of requests coming in from viewers that said, if this continues to just consolidate and this becomes an NFL and there's like a 32 team upper league, or a let's say a 24 Big Ten and a 24 SEC, and then everybody else is just playing football on streaming devices or wherever they can find the outlets, who's going to make it versus who's not. And I came up with 23 schools that are definitely, they're safe. And then there's a lot of gray area with about 45 or so schools. Wow. A lot of decisions, a lot of power plays would need to be made.
What would kind of be funny is if you made up this list today, Mark, and you go back the last 20 years, a team like Nebraska might not be on that list of safe. I mean, think about that.
They made my list, but they were an afterthought. I missed them going through the Big Ten. I had to go back and add Nebraska just because I still think that the drawing power lifts them into that upper echelon. Certainly nothing they've done on the field. I totally agree, Tide Guy.
Exactly. And it's just funny to think that a team like Nebraska wouldn't make some people's list, because over the last 20 years, they really haven't done anything.
Yeah, probably the weakest of the 23, in my opinion, in terms of popularity / football, is Utah. And Utah is tremendous. Of course, they've won consecutive Pac-12 championships, but they're kind of new to the party. And Iowa, I I look to see as the weakest of the 23.
But another thing, Mark and guys, me and Tony talked about this, and I hear this all the time. They're like, well, the Power 2, if they break away, college football will lose so many eyes and this and that. But the numbers are out there, and I don't remember who come up with them. Tony probably does. But they said that if the teams go into the Big Ten and the teams go into the SEC, and if they each add just 4 teams, and they listed a combination of 12 you could pick from, if the Big Ten and the SEC broke away, they would hold over 75% of all viewership is already in those 2 conferences. So by losing the other teams, people say, well, you'll lose interest and blah, blah, blah. The numbers don't prove that.
So you're saying the 16 in the SEC, the 16 in the Big Ten, add 4 each, and they play a 40-team league by themselves.
Right.
Wow, I would hate to see that.
Oh, I would hate to see that too. And I mean, that would be terrible, because then my question is, if they do break off, then the non-conference games, do we got to pay Iowa State, Oklahoma, Arizona State? Do we got to pay them $500 million to come into our stadium?
Yeah, so I would see it more likely to not be, like, in all honesty, if you look back, if we go back 30 years, whatever, 40 years, I guess maybe a little bit further, but back in those times, the lesser conferences were more relevant. And just in the same way that I would say today, like the MAC and the Mountain West are, and I love the MAC and I love the Mountain West, but both are like not as relevant in the major scene. And I think what we may instead see is just more of that. Because, like, for example, we never got rid of the MAC. We didn't get rid of the Mountain West. We didn't officially send them off to somewhere else. We just sort of chipped away at their relevancy. And it wouldn't surprise me instead of like a direct like split, you see more moves. Like, for example, getting rid of the automatic qualifiers. You to the playoff, you do stuff like that, and piece by piece, you just willow away the relevancy.
I'm not advocating for the 2 conferences just to play each other. I'm not advocating for these smaller schools not to have access to the college football playoff. I'm just telling you what I think from a TV perspective, with the TV network hat on, is I'm looking at how I'm going to get my return on investment. And I see the brands out there that drive the numbers, right? They have that data. It's very honed in, and it's costly. So, and it goes to show historically, if you're on TV, you're going to drive numbers, and people are going to see that, and they're going to increase their chances to get to the college football playoff. These other teams in the other conferences, whatever they may look like in 5, 6, 7 years, they'll still have access if the rules stay the same with the college football playoff. They might have to be amended a bit, but it's the perfect storm that's happening right now. You don't have any NCAA governance. You have NIL, you have the transfer portal, you have TV contracts, you have realignment. Heck, you throw in the AAU today and whatever that's worth. If that's going to be a tipping point for Notre Dame, who knows? But you got a grant of rights. You got inequality in TV contracts and conferences and teams. It's change is happening, and it's on the horizon, and it'll continue to happen.
You don't think the Big 12 has enough territory? And when I say territory, I mean both land and schools and viewership and everything that could be interpreted to be, to stabilize and try to be a weakest third conference, but still in the mix.
They have 2 states.
Yeah,
Right,
and unfortunately,
I'm not joking.
Picture, Tony.
the money gap will be too high.
Technically more than that, but yes,
Yeah.
they're consolidated in 2 states.
Here's a
No,
perfect,
they're not. No, I mean,
hold on. Here's a perfect.
The Big 12. Hold on, real quick. Just sorry. The Big 12 has right now the dominant team in only 2 states: West Virginia and Kansas. They don't have the dominant team in Iowa. They don't have the dominant team in Oklahoma. They don't have any of the three most dominant teams in Texas because Oklahoma is a huge fan base in the state of Texas. I'm probably missing. They don't have the dominant team in Utah. They don't have the dominant team in Florida. They don't have the dominant team in Ohio. They have the dominant fan base in Kansas and the dominant fan base, both of them, and the dominant fan base in West Virginia.
So the SEC and the Big Ten are going to pick them over or completely leave them alone to be irrelevant.
No, see, hold on, guys. You guys keep saying this. They can't
what they
make
did to
them
the MAC.
irrelevant. They need to have them involved because it's not just the big schools that have the. When you see those big numbers, 15 million or so for Ohio State, it's not just Ohio State fans who they're playing. It's college football fans that drive all those gigantic numbers. And if you kill the golden goose, right? The heartland right on the middle and the Big 12 fans, they all watch television. Even if it's not a Big 12 game, they're watching football. They'll go to other sports. They'll become Kansas City Chiefs fans and things like that. If you make their schools and their conferences completely irrelevant, then you're going to lose a huge part of your viewership.
I agree with you, Tim. That's why I said I don't think you make a split. No one agrees with me on this. I'm the only one saying this. I feel Tim and you and I are the only ones who think this way. But you don't actually split it off. You just push it more and more towards a focus on the Big Ten and the SEC. That's how I think you get there from an incremental standpoint. Just like we've done, quite honestly, with the I mean, there was a time when Wyoming was powerful and Miami of Ohio was powerful. Right. And those times have passed.
And another thing they could do, Tony, and I brought this up, is let's say the Big Ten and the SEC they don't break away, but they continue to rise. And for Rick's point, what if the Big Ten and the SEC decide to stay at just 8 conference games and then play 2 crossover games?
Yeah.
And every even year you pick out where people finish, the average finish, and you have the top 2 play each other, the 3 and 4 play each other, in a home and away. And there's your 10 games. And then you pick up one of the other teams from, the leftovers, and then you play a cupcake so that way you pay for their football program. And there's your 12 games. And by adding the crossover 2 games, the Big Ten and the SEC, that's going to draw a lot of fans to watch those games. If you balance it out where you have Ohio State playing Georgia and Alabama, and you have, instead of Ohio State playing Vandy and Alabama playing Rutgers, you match them up fairly evenly where it's going to be a good game.
That's going to be a tough sell to coaches and players to play a packed schedule of nothing but Power 5 or whatever we're going to call it in the future games.
That's great for us.
Yeah, but think about it, though. If you're going to go to a 16 team, and let's face it, this 12-team playoff is going to go to 16, it's not going to be that hard of a sell because then you could lose a couple games. You know what I mean?
I'm not talking about losing. I'm talking about getting beat up, and I'm talking about players going to the field that many times against. There's a difference when a USC player goes out onto the field against Michigan in the future versus playing San Jose State. So playing that type of schedule and playing that type of competition week after week after week is a tough sell.
I mean, are we talking about, did Michigan find another convent or orphanage to add to their schedule?
Yeah, Tony, I was just going to say, I look at Michigan's schedule and they play 2 teams this year. So you have to play 2 SEC.
Whoa, that's from a true SEC guy right there.
Come on, there's an orphanage or 2 that Michigan has yet to put on their non-conference schedule.
Good. Then
Look
Alabama
at the
plays
Big Ten
4
teams
teams.
they play, though. I mean, unfortunately, Michigan
and by the way, I would tell that to Coach Ohio State was here.
Michigan only plays Ohio State and Penn State. The rest of the Big Ten teams on that schedule is fairly easy.
Oh, I'm not debating that. But then if we're going to shine that same spotlight on everyone, and we'll do that with Alabama, then Alabama plays like 4 games.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. And Georgia, who do they play? I mean, yeah, I'll give it to you. But I'm saying, I mean, we say Alabama plays all these. No, there's 3 or 4 decent teams in the SEC. There's 3 or 4 in the Big Ten. I mean,
yeah, when you say decent, I'm a little kinder than you. I think it takes something out of a player showing up to have to play, even if they're bad. Auburn, Texas A&M, I'm talking about the physical toll on the players. There's a difference between lining up against the Citadel and lining up against Texas A&M, even if they're not good.
Right.
And I agree with Tim. I just don't think, I think that this Midwest, and when I say the Midwest, I'm talking Oklahoma, Kansas, that territory is just too valuable and too significant just to be discarded completely and ignored by two other conferences.
I got something interesting to think about, and I know this is two completely different sports, but it's NCAA athletics, and it just happened. It's happening right now. Take a look at the College World Series. Okay, been going on for over 60 years, since 1947, and the SEC signed a deal with ESPN back in 2008, 15-year deal. And up until that point, the SEC had won 6 College World Series by 2 teams from 1990 through 2008. And that was 5 by LSU and 1 by Georgia. The Pac-12 had won 27 College World Series, including 12 by USC, and 5 other schools, including Arizona, Arizona State, Oregon State, and Stanford and Cal, actually 7 schools. If you add in 4 other schools from the West in other conferences, such as Fresno State, Pepperdine, Cal State Fullerton, 3 other schools, I should say, with 6 other championships. So baseball was a West Coast, Southern California, Western sport. How, the SEC is always, there's always been baseball, but why they chose not to participate or participate on a limited basis is beyond me. I don't know those answers. But when you get an influx of cash, football drives everything. And I think Tony put out a great graphic. Look at all the money that's pumped into the SEC. I think out of the top 15 teams, probably 12 are from the SEC and what they spend on baseball. And since 2009, the SEC has won 8 national championships or 8 College World Series.
Well, after Cody's graphic, I know where Vanderbilt's spending all their money now. So they're spending it on baseball.
Well, yeah, they got to put the money somewhere. I mean, there's so many, golden waterfalls and statues and nutrition you can spend money on in buildings. But what I'm getting at is you have a head of the committee from Auburn who couldn't explain why USC was left out, even though the metrics, the RPI, was solid. Also, for a smaller school like Cal Irvine, who's a University of California Irvine, it's a great baseball program. But what I'm getting at is USC was 4th place in the Pac-12, 17-13 record, in arguably one of the best baseball conferences, probably top 3, probably number 3. And Arizona, who finished 8th in the Pac-12, but had a hot week and a half at the end of the season, who was 12-18, was put in to the field of 64 over USC and Arizona State, which was laughable. But you have a conference, the head of the playoff committee or the College World Series committee, who is not from, with a biased view. It's ridiculous. But that's what can happen in college football. It's regionality. I mean, that's like Arizona State being the head of the college football playoff committee and not putting in Georgia. And Georgia has 4 losses. I mean, that's where we are in college athletics. It's money. It comes down to money. And the TV networks are going to drive and influence future decisions. I mean, you can't tell me that the Pac-12 forgot how to play baseball, but the SEC and certain people would like to think that they do. It's happening. We're watching it. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I haven't watched a college baseball game in 25 years, so I couldn't really tell you what's going on in college baseball. I covered the sport for 7 years when I covered the SEC, and I to your point, Rick, I went to 2 College World Series to cover teams from the SEC. And one of those 2 seasons when there was 6 teams, I don't know how many teams are in the College World Series now, but there were 6 at the time. One of these 2 particular years, 4 teams from the SEC West out of 6. There were 6 teams in the SEC West, and 4 have made the College World Series. And the other 2 teams were from the Pac-12, Stanford and UCLA. And
So
the other year was the same thing. It was all SEC and practically all SEC and Pac-12.
Here's an example of money and how it changes things, because the SEC, I believe, has 6 teams that have won 8 championships since 2009. So it's not just 1 or 2. I mean, they've got a lot of great teams out there. And a lot of it has to do with that money that came from ESPN to the football program. So what I'm saying is when you have a disparity that's going to be happening between the SEC, the Big Ten, and all the other conferences, let's look at the Big 12, and then you have the amount of TV coverage at the right time, the right windows, there's going to be a lot of debate. Should we take this 3-loss Big Ten team versus this 1-loss Big 12 team, as an at-large? And again, wonder who's going to be on the committee that year. And it's sad. It really is sad. And when USC gets snubbed, and I'm not just saying it's because of USC, but when you have a team that was 7, and I understand it's different sports, but it's college athletics and all the shenanigans happen in these sports. But when you're 17-13 and 4th in the Pac-12, how do you take an 8th place team that's 12-18? Somebody can bend the metrics any way they want to. And this happens in college basketball with the NCAA March Madness. Happens all the time. But
I can only explain that one of 2 ways. Either everything you're saying from a political standpoint is true, that it's rigged and leaning in one direction where the money and the power is, so the selection's not accurate, or we all know that based on results on the field that a 12-18 team in one conference could be better than a 17-13 team in another conference. I don't know how good the conferences are, and I don't know how well that they're playing outside the conference.
Right. And you can talk about metrics if you'd like, or you could talk about the eyeball test, which is also popular. But this goes to what you were saying the other day, Mark, is that I wouldn't want a committee voting me in or not voting me in. Do you recall saying that?
Oh, absolutely. I say that every other day.
It's the results on the field, the facts are the things that matter. And anybody who chooses to let a committee determine their fate, but what's going to happen in the college football playoff with those at-large bids, right? There's going to be discussion. You can use metrics. You can use the eyeball test. You can use strength of schedule, whatever you want to use. But decisions have to be made.
Yeah, and those decisions are already being made with a 14 playoff. But to your point, obviously, there's even more control. There's even more to decide. And there's even more teams under consideration for a 12-team playoff than there obviously is for a 4. So there's much greater of a dynamic that can be skewed and manipulated. Chad is asking here with the super chat, and I commented in the chat that we will get to all the super chats, whether that's all of us or just me individually. We will get to them. Chad is saying, if the Big Ten expands, I'd rather have Clemson than Notre Dame. Your thoughts? ? Well, I hate to answer a question with a question, but my question back to you would be a big why. No, you don't take Clemson over Notre Dame. Clemson's a great school and a tremendous football program, and a better football program than Notre Dame. Maybe not right this second, but certainly over the last 10 years it has been. But no, that is not the way to go.
Can I give you one Notre Dame tinfoil hat moment?
Of course.
There is only one school in the Pac-12 that has not on its own publicly declared its loyalty to the Pac-12. And that is Notre Dame's other best friend, Stanford. Just keep that. Now, granted, Stanford's president is in hiding because of like a huge research scandal, so he doesn't talk to the media at all for anything. But it's just something to keep in mind.
Sounds like another video I posted.
Yeah, I
Stanford
trust
and Notre Dame to the Big Ten.
I would trust Stanford no further than you can throw the tree.
Yes. So there is.
Anyway, I got to run real quick, guys. But hey,
Thank
this was
you,
fun.
Tony.
See you tonight.
Thank you, Tony. Tony,
See you guys
and I-
later.
Bye,
Thanks,
Tony.
Mark.
I'm sorry.
See you
What's that?
guys.
Thanks,
I gotta
Rick.
take off.
Appreciate you being here. Tim, you can hang on if you'd like. I just want to remind everyone that we're jumping on the line tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern time with Tony. Wanted to make this more about the football fit, Miami, Notre Dame to the Big Ten. I got to admit, I've lost track because I've matched up so many teams against so many conferences with all this speculation of various teams to various conferences. I know that I've matched up Notre Dame versus the Big Ten. So that video's out there. Check it out. I believe I did Miami to the Big Ten. If not, that will be unveiled here shortly. Yeah, it would be something for sure. Tim, where do you think this lands in 10 years, roughly?
No, I mean, I think a lot of the discussions are right. I do see that. I'm wondering, and people, I said at the beginning, we're looking at expansion of these conferences, right? And the dirt, if it is going to a more professional model, right, where they're going to maximize all of the income models and everything they're talking about, at some point there's going to be some contraction as well. I'm just going to have to say that right now because they're not going to keep adding and not subtracting. So I'm wondering when that phase. Do you think there's any validity to that? So do you believe that there's teams in the SEC right now? I don't want to name any. I don't want to isolate any program, or programs in the Big Ten that are going to be there no matter what. When we start talking about the 10 years from now, when it's going strictly to these two gigantic super conferences, this new like almost NFL model.
Well, I believe it has to be part of business, exactly what you're talking about, that if there is evaluation and valuation of these schools by these conferences, the two in particular, that at some point, if this is how they're evaluating the sport and these particular teams and the on-field value that they bring, which equals money, that they would have to take inventory of their own. If you're going to go out and you're going to obliterate other conferences by poaching from them, I think all ethical guidelines are generally out the door. So why would you not discard particular schools for not being a valuation to your product?
Yeah,
You're
I think
making that same judgment against these other conferences. Why don't you look internally?
what Fox and what ESPN is driving has gotten rid of regionality, has removed the traditional rivalries within conferences, right? Like USC and Stanford, for instance. These things may all just go away. So to think that it's going to stop just at expansion, if this really is all about money, like I've been hearing, why would they keep on schools that are negative revenue for? Like, why are you to give 1/20th of your revenue when there's clearly programs that are not really driving that income? And so then you remove a couple of them and then you add a couple more of the ones that you think might be bigger producers. Like, for instance, you have a school like Washington right now, and it probably doesn't make much sense given the amount that they would probably bring in, as far as just TV dollars, viewers, and football. But I'll bet you there's a couple programs in the Big Ten right now that they would be a much stronger fit than
Absolutely.
are currently. So then you start talking about what you and I talked briefly about is, do you really though want to alienate large fan bases of college football fans in order to make that dollar? And then at what point do you begin to, again, kill the golden goose? Because the college football fan base is massive, and it's not all Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson. I mean, it's filled up with Kansas State and even smaller schools like like a Houston and things that they have other options. They have professional sports they could watch. They can go to the NFL. And I think that here's one more thing. The closer you get to making the college football, the NFL, why not just watch the NFL? It's a better product.
Mm-hmm.
You ever seen cornerbacks in the NFL compared to cornerbacks in the pros? In the NFL compared to cornerbacks? You look no further than the cornerback play and the secondary when it comes to what's a better product on the field. So, got to be careful.
You are right.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried that like schools like Missouri, Wake Forest, Boston College, like I think the worst case scenario is that they make like a FCS for those schools, and that they like separate it out more.
Yeah, because if this keeps driving in this direction, we're going to go from college football 1990s, 2000s being regionalized to it being every level's going to be a national level, but they're going to be at different levels. Like your elite are going to have this conference configuration that's going to span the entire map. Then your tier 2, whatever that is going to span the national map. And the distinction's not going to be regions. It's going to be levels of play and levels of value economically, but every level is going to go all across the nation.
Yeah.
And that's
I think that's what the expansion. That's the expansion of the playoffs. I think forget making it more of a playoff and not an invitational. I think they did it because if I'm thinking about it right now, these guys were thinking about it probably 5-10 years ago. So I'm thinking that they realize that they're going to have to somehow keep everybody involved. Think of college basketball, right? You have some of those smaller conferences, but they have good teams in those small conferences that can get to the big dance, and therefore, so it generates all that excitement during the regular season in order to get to March Madness, and then it continues. Sure, they go out in the first round or the second round, but they got there. They have something to hang their hat on. Like we're an NCAA tournament team. Their conferences, they hang their hat on the fact that we went to the tournament and we did this, and every once in a while, maybe 3 years ago, we upset so-and-so when we got to the round of 32. There's these conversations that keep them involved. It's just going to have to take a couple of, teams maybe that, I don't know, somehow an 8 seed wins, and moves up and goes in and gets in there somehow. And that's all it's going to take for some of these smaller conferences to say, hey, look, remember when we did this 2 years ago and blah, blah. You remove that. And again, like I'm talking about cutting, starting. So now we have the expansion. If they ever go to a contraction phase and you start relegating these, almost to a lower level, at least in football or soccer in Europe, especially in England, your team does get relegated, but there's always a chance for them to move back up again. Once this starts happening, let's say you got kicked out of the SEC, and no, Daryl, I caught your comment. I'm not talking about that. Wasn't. I was thinking there's a couple of schools before I think about Kentucky, by the way, but if they're not going to be able to come back, you'll be derailed. You'll start following the Kansas City Chiefs 100% of the time and not even following college football. You know what I mean? So that's what you have to be careful of if you are the SEC, the Big Ten, Fox, CBS, and ESPN. Obviously, CBS to a smaller degree.
Yeah, it's fun. The fun part of this, to me, is conjecturing about matchups and the thought of seeing Notre Dame play Penn State and to see and think about Miami going to Wisconsin in November and playing, and those matchups are intriguing, but I don't think that overrides my disappointment in the overall movement of the sport in this direction.
Can I address someone in the chat says, what do I think Colorado's going to the Big 12? I don't think they're going to the Big 12. Matter of fact, if for whatever reason, if Miami and this whole smoke about Miami and Notre Dame, more than ever, it solidifies the Pac-12, because as much as the Big 12 wants to flex their feathers on this media deal, the bigger brands are still in the Pac-12. That's not even close. Programs like Oregon and Washington, and even to a smaller degree, Stanford and Cal. They've got, they're a head coach away. And who knows? Remember this also. What's going to happen to the Pac-12 now that USC's out of there? When USC had its trouble, schools like Stanford had a resurgence. Harbaugh had a big thing to do, so you get the right coach in there. But all of a sudden, boom, they started moving up. Oregon was doing well under Bellotti, but after the sanctions hit, a lot of these schools filled in that void. That's going to happen. And there's a lot of West Coast football players out there that these schools are going to pick up. So to say that the Pac-12 is and Colorado is going to leave, and what Tony said about Arizona getting their AAU status, that had a lot to do with being in the Pac-12. So, and remember that the presidents are making these decisions. So don't get ahead of yourself. I don't think Colorado's going anywhere, period.
Jason, thank you so much for the super sticker. Appreciate you so much. And also Erica, our resident Iowa fan. Hey, everyone, please gently. So Erica's made a big pushback against the smashing the like button. That's a little violent. She doesn't like that. Gently press the like button. Thank you. And go Hawks. Oh, Iowa. Go after that Big Ten Western Division Championship this year. You better go after that thing, because that might be your last chance at a Big Ten championship in a long time.
And this isn't Mark's only channel, guys. Like he's also streaming on the Notre Dame and Miami channel. So go over there and hit like on those streams as well.
Thank you, Will. Appreciate you. One last thing for you two, because I've certainly talked about this enough. And this is the reason why we struck up this live stream, because we're going to again, everyone, get together tonight at 8:00 Eastern time with Tony and really dissect the academics, the football numbers, the metrics, the money, the athletic budgets, and so forth. So we're going to take the deep dive on, actually, Oregon fans, we were pinpointing you tonight. We were going to do our deep dive on Oregon. This news broke, so we're going to focus on Miami and Notre Dame, of course. So that's coming up tonight. This was all about football. Will, how do you think Notre Dame and Miami would do in the Big Ten?
I mean, I think they're both. I don't know about Miami, because I feel like Miami they're
a wild card, aren't they?
Right. They have to eventually get it right. But I feel like the Irish will be fine. They'll be up there. I think at least every 4 years, Notre Dame will be in the Big Ten championship game at the bare minimum. So
How often?
At least once every 4 years, preferably more than that. But even if Marcus keeps the program where it is now and doesn't get it any better, we'll at least get in the championship game every 4 years.
They're Penn State, right?
Better than Penn State. Mark.
Oh, better than Penn State?
Well, I don't know. I feel like this year will be better than Penn State, but who knows?
Okay.
I mean, I'm feeling good about the offense, and I think our defense.
Much Penn State, Notre Dame being pretty much almost equals.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Penn State will have a good year, but I don't know.
Now, you have been to a playoff twice, and they have not.
Yeah.
But you've got a completely different coach now. Mm-hmm. Tim, do you have any thoughts about Notre Dame, Miami to the Big Ten, and how well they would compete?
Both schools have shown that with the right coach, they can recruit at the highest level. You have Miami in one of the hottest recruiting areas on the planet for college football in South Florida. I mean, if they just kept the guys from a few, was it Broward and Dade and some of those counties down there, if they kept those guys all at home, they've shown that they can dominate college football, right? I mean, who's had a better run than they had during the 80s and into the 90s? I mean, not many teams. So could they do it? Absolutely. There's certain programs where you can't see it, but throughout history, Notre Dame has shown it. You said it yourself. They've had two. What has Notre Dame really been missing? When I think of those Notre Dame teams, they're missing, and for whatever reason, Brian Kelly could not get an elite quarterback. Well, now this is going to open a lot up. It'll open it up a lot, I think, joining Big Ten. I'm not excited about some of the I like Marcus Freeman, but some of the other hires that they've done, I don't know. I've kind of questioned, but hopefully I don't think it's a matter of money at Notre Dame, but maybe it is a matter of focus. And I think when USC decided to get their stuff together and join the Big Ten, they realized, hey, we've really got to get our ducks in a row here. And then also look at some of the schools in the Big Ten. Like you just brought up the Big Ten West. Look at that Big Ten West. They say, hey, look, we need to do something because things are changing around here. And I think everything rises, right? And so I think that when Notre Dame and when Miami join the Big Ten, they're going to have to take those steps. Get the right, make sure you have the right AD, make sure you have the right head coach, maybe sure you have right, just people making decisions in general. And
I feel a lot better about the future of the program if Brady Quinn becomes the next athletic director. I feel a lot better with Brady than Jack Swarbrick.
Can I tell you a short story about hiring your ex-football stars to be your AD? You got about an hour and a half.
Brady is
about
much
3 or 4.
better. I'm more comfortable with Brady than I would be with your other guys. Brady knows what he's doing. He's running the NIL program as well as he can.
There is something to be said about someone that's done this before at a level. Sure, if you're going to be the AD at Cincinnati, right, or something like that, yeah, you can learn on the job. But believe me, USC over the past decade, first we got sanctioned by the NCAA, then we sanctioned ourselves. All great men. Lynn Swann, brilliant man. Pat Hayden, brilliant. These guys aren't dumb people. These are brilliant people. But they had no athletic department experience. Yeah, no athletic department really experience running the athletic department. They had experience within the athletic department. If you bring a Brady Quinn on, man, I'm just telling you, just be careful because you're going to get a little bit of trouble because he doesn't have that experience that you think. He might be charismatic, but there's more to that than just being up to, glad hand a bunch of people and get some money.
All right, we'll see.
He sounds good on the Fox set before the games. We know that. Yes.
Yeah. So did
And he looks good. Yeah.
So did Pat Hayden. Was pretty good on some of those Irish broadcasts too. You can in front of a microphone, you're good, but running an athletic department's a whole different ball game. So I hope it works out better for you guys if that happens. Will, that's all we'll say to you.
Yes, hope that he's not Pat Hayden or Lynn Swann, that he's more Trev Alberts, because I do believe that Trev Alberts is going to be a good AD and has been a good AD. He's just got a lot to fix there, and he's got some major challenges there.
And I want to repeat, that's not a slight on either one of those men. They've both done brilliantly in the business, in their own personal lives. They really have. It's just, to be an AD, you need a skill. Look at the teams, look at the programs that are doing really well. They have top-notch ADs, and it goes from, the department goes head on down. And so if you don't have that head man and you're working, by a committee and relying on this and that and the other, it just, I'm telling you right now, it just doesn't work. So there's that.
Mike, thank you so much for the super chat. Mike 3883, always providing some support, always with some great comments. Mike, we appreciate you. Put that nasty Wolverine helmet in the trash. Go Bucks. Okay, well, I've got the Wolverine helmet right here. Mike, I will tell you. Your request there reminds me of a similar one. This was a few years ago when somebody super chatted like $50 and they said, Mark, how much will it take for you to throw that Michigan helmet in the trash? Same request, basically. And I said, well, $50 is not going to do it. I run a college football show here, and Michigan is kind of a top brand. So I understand that $50 it's a, hey, thank you so much for the generosity. Yes, it's a significant contribution, but, maybe I'll go down to Texas Roadhouse. Maybe I won't after YouTube takes a bite out of it. But the point being, I told that particular person, I said, I'll throw this. I will give you the satisfaction of the optics of me. I'll go grab a trash basket and I'll throw it in the trash. If that's what you want me to do for $50, I'll give you the optics of that. But then I'm just going to take it right out of the trash and put it right back on the shelf. Now, if you want it permanently taken off, we did some metrics. I kind of estimated over a number of years, if you want that Michigan helmet removed, this is going to cost like hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that's a whole different level of financing. But Mike, yes, I can, do you want me to keep it across the room? Do you want to hear it hit against the wall? Yes. We've got a trash can over here. There it goes. Thank you for the contribution, Mike.
Really quickly, Mark, if you don't mind, if I go ahead and just quickly talk about Sunday night.
Yes, we've got a nice little crowd on hand. They need to hear about this.
Well, just you guys, those of you who are out there on Sunday night, we have lined up Anthony Munoz to come on the show. He is going to talk about not only about his time at USC and with the Bengals. Obviously, this is a man who has 11 All-Pro years. He played 13 seasons in the NFL. Although he was injured, he only played 16 games in college. He ended up playing all but 3 games in 13 seasons for the Bengals in their Ring of Honor. Man of the Year 1991. Obviously, you're seeing the picture. He has the gold jacket, so he's in the NFL Hall of Fame. All-Century team. And just what's more impressive about him is he's a great guy. I lined up a bunch of questions, asked him what he thought about them. It was about an hour's worth of questions. I said, I don't want to pretend like I know how much time you have. but he basically said, I said about an hour worth of questions. He said, hey, whatever it takes, however long we need to do, we'll go an hour's fine, or whatever it takes to get it done. So that's just telling you the kind of guy that he is. Hope you guys can join us. It's on, so it's at 5:00 Pacific, 8 Eastern on Sunday, June 4th. I hope I can see all you there.
That's going to be phenomenal. Anthony Munoz on the Trojan Conquest live show. This Sunday, mark it down, everyone. We're going to continue to remind you multiple times every day. Sunday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. Absolutely. Well, guys, unless you've got anything else.
No, I'm
we'll
good.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah,
absolutely.
thanks.
We'll get back together tonight with Tony.
I've been saying this is the one. Getting Notre Dame and Miami with or without Florida State. I do think Florida State's more of an SEC fit. I think they're going to go with Clemson, like people have talked about. But man, if the Big Ten can land both Miami and Notre Dame, then throw in maybe a combination of, and I know people are going to say, what, Stanford? But Stanford and a combination of either Oregon, reverse that. Washington and a combination of either Oregon or Stanford. I think that'd be the way to go.
Yeah,
that would be lights out. And I would love to see what the SEC can do to try to match that. I know Clemson's a great brand, played a great decade of football, have a great tradition. That would be a huge add. And so would Florida State to a degree as well. But I don't think it matches what USC's bringing in. I'm sorry, what the Big Ten's bringing in with USC, Miami, Notre Dame, etc. I think it'd be very interesting.
Well, we know that the SEC's played the best football, and the Big Ten's been in second place most of the last 10 or 15 years. But there's been a sizable or distinct gap, but that seems to be closing. And of course, the Big Ten made the big move last summer that matched what the SEC did the season before. But now the Big Ten appears to be primed to make the initial punch this time. That could be something that there may not be enough institutions with great football programs or potentially great football programs left for the SEC to counter. So the Big Ten has an opportunity to take the lead here.
And you know what, Mark? People don't really talk about it enough, but it was very close to being an all Big Ten championship game this year.
Yeah.
And if we talk about how we just said about getting that South Florida talent together down in Miami, joining a big conference, and with USC coming from the West, and you got adding another powerhouse football and Notre Dame, that would be a pretty substantial way to maybe even make the jump, because the Big Ten is pretty darn close. It just needs that depth. Bringing in some of these schools, if they play to their potential, if USC plays to its potential, if Notre Dame played to its potential, Miami, it would not have to look up to any program. And if you want to see the heat ratcheting up on the new era of football, look no further than Nick Saban. Nick Saban's been complaining about everything the past couple of weeks, right? Am I wrong? Complaining about scheduling,
yes.
Complaining about NIL, pointing fingers at USC, what they're doing over there. When the guy's been, let's be real, NIL's been around for decades, right? But now it's finally legal. And for guys to start pointing fingers around about, people buying players, this and that, it's just, you can see that the heat's coming up on the SEC. So SEC fans, go ahead, take a shot at me. No worry, I don't care. But on the field last year was pretty close at the top of college football.
It was really close. Where you guys have the differences in the depth, but it looks like the Big Ten's adding those depth pieces. So look out. Don't remind me of how much better debate and how many more views we would have had over the last 5 months had that Michigan-Ohio State game been played.
Yeah.
Or at least if we would have had Ohio State win the national championship, because they were, by all accounts, closer than Michigan. Sorry, Michigan fans, you lost to TCU. It wasn't Georgia, number one. Number two, you had to drive the ball 50 or 60 yards to get there. Like, Ohio State was like that close.
Yeah.
But the debate between Michigan beating Ohio State, winning the Big Ten championship, but Ohio State being the national champion would have just been gold. That debate for months and months and months on who has bragging rights.
Absolutely, yeah.
Good stuff.
Mark,
Tim,
really quickly.
Thank you so much.
Really quickly. So who do you think they add? So let's just say in hypothetical, both of you guys, let's say they add Notre Dame and Miami, right, and get to 18. Who do you guys think are your next two to make it in the at least round 20?
I would like Stanford and Florida State.
That would be lights out, yeah.
Yeah, or Stanford and Clemson would probably. I'd rather Clemson.
Maybe Stanford and Clemson, yeah.
Yeah, I'd rather.
But see, you know, the thing about Clemson is they've got, you know, with South Carolina, there's a really close connection there.
Yeah.
And then you have the fact that it's geographically, although Florida State's way up there in the Panhandle, you know, in Tallahassee.
Yeah.
It's which is pretty deep SEC country. Same time, it's not quite South Carolina deep. So I mean,
yeah, Florida State's more aligned with Miami from a historical standpoint, a rivalry standpoint, from a geographic standpoint, from the standpoint of their academic ranks. Florida State and Miami are like razor close, like right in the middle of the Big Ten range of schools, while Clemson is not there. And as Tony pointed out, Florida State's on that top 15 list, which I guess would be about a top 7 or 8 list now of AAU membership. So Florida State's knocking on the door to receive that. So they're gunning for it, and they're doing all the things that they have to do to establish that. And I also just think that Florida recruiting, again, that would be another stronghold in what's considered, you know, you guys know that Miami's almost a separate state compared to the rest of the state of Florida. That would be another, there's just a different dynamic to the recruiting geography there in the state. Both great places to get players, but you know, they're almost like different states, the state of Miami versus the rest of Florida. So to get Florida State would kind of cap off the stranglehold in the rest of the state.
yeah. Well, thanks, Mark. It's been fun.
Thank
you, Tim. Appreciate you stopping by. Will, good to see you. Thanks for jumping on. I wanted to make sure that I caught up with the rest of these super chats just to make sure we didn't miss any. We got Larry. Thank you so much for being here. Jason as well. We answered your question. Larry, thank you so much. So Jimmy Touchdown coming in with any organization like the AAU that would admit a directional JUCO like USC is neither elite nor prestigious, Ivy League minus Penn or bust. Okay. We sometimes just read the super chats. All right. Falcon Rex, appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for that. It's all about the U. Unfortunately, we could not deliver on our Miami show this week. We'll be back next Wednesday at 7 Eastern. Then again, okay, if Notre Dame joins the Big Ten, Freeman's recruiting would go way up. Also, Mark, when Notre Dame beats Ohio State this year, Notre Dame beats Ohio State this year. So let's try to stick to the facts. But anyway, when Notre Dame beats Ohio State this year in USC, we won't lose kids to you anymore. Okay. Well, that's a big if, not a when. Here we've got Wicked Bronco Productions again. Thank you so much for the contribution. Thoughts on my way too early college football predictions. Tennessee 13-0. So my next question is, are you a Tennessee fan? Because Tennessee is not going to be 13-0. I don't see it. Defense, missing your quarterback who managed games as well as just about anybody in the country versus Joe Milton, more of a project. Michigan 12-1, Oregon 12-1. I don't necessarily see Oregon surviving a Pac-12 schedule with only one loss, and Notre Dame at 11-1. Notre Dame's got to play Ohio State at home, Clemson on the road, USC at home. Possible. In order of probability of making it, Michigan number 1, Oregon 2, Notre Dame 3, Tennessee a distant 4th. Not that they're not a good team. Not that I don't think Josh Heupel's doing a tremendous job. He is. And they were close last year. They were reasonably close. Their record was close. They lost to South Carolina by 27 points, and they got blown out by Georgia. Don't look at the final score. They got wrecked in that game. It was 27-14. It was 27-7 in the fourth quarter. Georgia wrecked their offense. So you have Tennessee elite offense go up against Georgia. We saw the result. We saw Ohio State elite offense go up against Georgia. We saw a completely different performance. Yeah, Tennessee had a really tremendous breakthrough season last year, but they really weren't that close to being a national championship contender last year. And again, they're going to have to show me something on defense. Chad, we addressed your question. Jason with the super sticker, thank you so much. Erica, one more time on the gently press the like button. Mike, thank you so much for your contribution. We appreciate that. And yes, the Michigan helmet went flying across the room and is now, yes, in a trash bucket. Falconer TRX. When we have multiple cameras spanning the studio, we'll be able to take that shot and you can see whether I drained it or not. Falconer TRX, Miami is going to get the program back on track. Erica comes back with, yeah, that is just how Saban is. Maybe he'll interrupt another Big Ten championship game again to beg his way into the playoff again. Yes, let's not forget that, Nick Saban. Although, I don't know who contacted whom. I know from working at a particular television network for a long time and seeing those calls being made typically by the network, understand that football coaches typically aren't begging their way onto shows. But who knows? Maybe Nick Saban picked up the phone and said, ESPN, I'm here. Get me on. Of course, ESPN's going to respond. Somebody like Nick Saban can jump on ESPN whenever he wants. They're always going to put him on because people watch Nick Saban. But my guess is that ESPN called him. My guess. But he was quick to take the phone call, Erica. And John Telly, would the Big 12 take Cal and San Diego State? I don't know that Cal would go to. I believe that the Big 12 would take Cal and San Diego State. I don't know that Cal would go to the Big 12. San Diego State, I believe, would go to the Big 12. But I think that San Diego State would rather be in a stabilized Pac-12 for a number of reasons. It's a better academic conference, and it's home. It is home. San Diego State, they're not going to get the level of recruits that USC and UCLA is leaving behind in Southern California, but they will benefit from those two schools leaving that territory and pick up some of the better 3 stars and maybe some 4 stars. San Diego State playing in the Pac-12, but of course, Pac-12 needs to get a media rights deal that makes sense and is enough money and of value to keep those programs around. Again, 8 o'clock Eastern time tonight, everyone. 8 o'clock Eastern tonight with Tony Altamore. We're taking the deep dive on Miami and Notre Dame to the Big Ten. Thank you so much for being here. We will see you in about 4 hours.